Okay, so first things first, the way this chuck separates is this half, the knurled half, separates from this main body here. The best way to break this apart is to make a couple clamping fixtures here. And what you're looking for is the diameter of this portion of the chuck right here where my thumb is, and also here at the top of the knurling. The threads are basically right underneath this knurled point. So if you pinch here, you're going to make it bind when you try to disassemble it. What I've done is taken some measurements here, the big and the small part, and I just added about 3/1000ths. And I have the luxury of cutting these on the water jet, but chances are if you have a $350 drill chuck, you're able to machine these some way yourself. I just used some 1/2-inch aluminum plate that I had laying around to cut these. So let's get started. Okay, as you can see here, I've got my two fixtures set up in a vise, the bottom one and the top one, and now it should just come down to twisting this thing off. It's right hand thread, so it should just unscrew normal direction. Well, that was easy. I barely took any effort at all there. Let's finish taking this thing apart. Okay, so we've got the cap off, and looks like this thing was probably assembled with some lithium grease. And you can see there's just a bunch of debris in here from 20 years of machining. That's probably how long it's been since this one's been taken apart. It probably never has. It hasn't been used a lot, but over time, just little chips and things get in here and make its operation sort of clunky and not smooth. So what we're basically going to do is just disassemble this whole thing, clean every part, and re-grease it, reassemble it. Okay, so here we are mostly apart. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're going to spin this out a ways until you can slide each of the jaws out from the sides. Then you can push this lead screw back down in through the other direction. Then this screws off the back. What you really need to be careful for is all these bearings in here that will fall out. They're in grease, so they should stay, but be careful, you don't want to lose any. Okay, well, surprisingly, this chuck was actually still working. It was just a little rough. But what's actually happened here is almost every single one of the ball bearings in here has broken in half. You can see these are all just like, this is a half piece of a bearing right here. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Every single ball is broken basically. So now I guess I'm going to have to try and locate some balls. It's time to check the McMaster car catalog. Okay, we're back here. It's Monday. The bearings showed up for McMaster car. Just some standard hardened steel 5/32 ball bearings. $3.20 for 100. So that's handled. Now, this thing had a 3/4 straight shank on it. The shank was really beat up over the years. It had slipped sometimes, and it's just not that good a shape. I just got another mill that's a Bridgeport. My other mill's a Tree. It takes straight shank. So I'm going to convert this to an R8. Now, this thing had been in here for 20 years, and it was not going to come apart. I had put this thing in my 5-seat collet holder, tried to separate it, wasn't happening, put some heat to it, still wasn't coming apart. Noticed on the top that it said it was a J6. It's stamped in here. That's the Jacobs taper on the chuck end. Looked up that spec and calculated out that back inside this cavity here, what you're actually looking at is that is the end of the shaft. So after fighting with it for a little bit, I basically was pretty positive that I could just press it apart, and it was correct. So you can just put this thing in your shop press and save yourself a hell of a lot of trouble just by pressing through to pop this out of the taper. It's almost so easy to do it that way, it's worth just disassembling the chuck to get the shank out of there rather than trying to fight it with wedges and whatever else. So now we can get all these parts cleaned, put the bearings in, and reassemble it. Okay, so we've got everything greased, and 25 bearings in here. Count them out. There's just enough for a slight gap in one of them. If you try to add one more, it'll pop one out. So 25. Jaws are assembled into the little carrier. Everything's greased. What we're going to do is assemble this. It's reverse threading. Put these two halves together. Like I said, we've got grease on all these running surfaces. Now we can drop this assembly through and into the bearings. You can notice here that there's a roll pin that detents. See it right there. There's a little notch in the body. Let's see if this will focus. See that? Now that's together. Now we just thread on the main part of the body, and we're good to go.